The time's almost finally upon us. After 3 years since the Ashes of Creation Alpha 1, the game's finally going into its Alpha 2 Phase 1 and will once again be entering the world of Verra. Those of us desperate enough to spend a couple $100 for access, that is. This video will be the quarterly Ashes of Creation recap that I usually do for the casual followers of this MMO, and hopefully the last one for quite some time, as once Alpha 2's here I'll be able to show off the new updates to the game firsthand, rather than having to sift through hours of live streams to break it all down. Just to set some expectations though, I actually reckon Alpha 2 Phase 1 for this game will likely be met with disappointment, as according to Steven, it's going to be a true alpha with lots of bugs. It's not going to be until Alpha 2 Phase 3 in May 2025 that the game will have a decent amount of content and feel more like a persistent early access experience that people are more used to. So don't be too hyped for the tests later this month. I know it's not what you want to hear, but that's the reality. But before we get into the quarterly recap, support the content by listening to today's sponsor. Metaphor ReFantazio, a stunning fantasy RPG from the brilliant minds behind Persona 3, 4 and 5. This game is available to play right now and also has a free demo that you can try out. In Metaphor ReFantazio, you embark on an incredible journey alongside your fairy companion Gallica, enter the royal tournament, lift a curse from the lost prince, and uncover the secrets of a captivating kingdom. This game is brimming with innovative features, awaken your archetype and unleash powerful abilities whilst mastering your unique job classes. Experience thrilling combat that blends turn-based strategy and real-time action. Navigate your way through a vast and beautiful world with your gauntlet runner, uncovering breathtaking landscapes, dungeons and towns. Along the way, forging deep bonds with your party members and unlocking their true potential. And don't forget to master time management as you balance exploration, combat and social interactions to achieve your goals. Metaphor ReFantazio is a feast for all the senses, so what are you waiting for? Get Metaphor ReFantazio now or download the free demo, and prepare to be enchanted by this incredible new JRPG experience. See you in the United Kingdom of Uchronia. Starting out with July's development livestream where we got a 2-hour showcase of the Bard. Starting out, we're in the Riverlands where we see a creepy clown looking character and a floating spellbook. This is the Bard. It's explained that we're in a new area of the Riverlands called the Derrigal States, which we've never seen before. It looks nice, basically a farmstead style area with wheat fields. I like the vibe. Quick look at the skill tree. Here it's explained that they've redesigned how skill trees will work for Alpha 2, because the ones shown in the past were way too linear. Now it's a lot more open, more choice, more branches. I like this change. As a bard, you can obviously use different instruments. You can select this in your skill tree. You've got the flute, fiddle and the drum. These are only cosmetic choices and don't affect gameplay outside of changing the animations and spell effects of your melodies. The bard has 5 different melodies. These are long-channeled casts that can be used whilst moving and in conjunction with other skills. The first one is Cheerful Melody, which provides light healing over time as well as increasing all healing received by your party. Next we have Pensive Melody. This one provides mana regen over time for the party. Epic Melody gives a 20% move speed buff to the party. Cathartic Melody gives your party members' attacks a 25% chance to heal for 50% of their damage done, which should average out to 13% life leech if in combat. Finally, we have Menacing Melody, which increases damage taken by 10% for nearby enemies. It's then explained that in the skill tree, bards can choose to either ramp up their melody's effectiveness over time, or weave 2 melodies at once. Next we've got Flourish. This will be a 2-charge movement ability that can be used whilst casting other abilities. I really like the freedom of movement they're going with for the bard. It looks really fluid, even allowing you to turn whilst in animation. Next up, the 4 dance abilities. Once again, these can all be used whilst moving and whilst casting your melodies. Shielding Dance both heals and puts a shield on nearby allies. Nimble Dance gives a 50% base evasion buff as well as 20% move speed. This stacks with Epic Melody for a potential 40% speed increase. Mesmerizing Dance is basically an AoE CC that incapacitates enemies for 10 seconds and stuns staggered enemies for 3 seconds. At this point it's also explained that crowd control in Ashes will have diminishing returns, as highlighted by the immunity buff. If you're somewhat familiar with how WoW's crowd control diminishing returns works, then it's basically the same kind of thing in Ashes. Each school of crowd control having its own diminishing returns, so to lock down an enemy for an extended period of time, you need to be using different types of crowd control. Finally, for the dance abilities, we have Maddening Dance. This deals AoE damage to enemies, applying something called Humiliated to targets that are demoralized. The TLDR is that there's 4 dance abilities, one for speed, CC, shielding, and damage. Next up, Get Off the Stage, a short-range melee frontal knockback that can also stagger and disarm. Quick Wit is a dual function ability. If you use this on an ally, you'll heal them. If you use it on an enemy, you'll deal damage and demoralize them. Lovely Serenade, a single target channeled heal over time. Anthem of Alacrity speeds up the attack speed and casting speed of an ally for 10 seconds. Chilling Lament, a single target ticking ice damage ability that inflicts chill. Dark Lullaby, a single target channeled DPS ability that can stun incapacitated targets on the final hit. Discordance, a DPS ability that applies stagger and bounces to nearby enemies. Gambit is an emergency heal for party members where you can instantly swap your health for theirs. And finally, we've got the story abilities. Not all of these were shown, but casting one of these abilities will give you a buff. Once you've stacked 3 of these buffs, you can cast a Saga ability, which is basically an ultimate ability for the Bard. Conflict increases party physical power by 10% for 30 seconds. Chaos gives your party magical crit. With 3 buffs stacked, we're then showed the Saga ultimate ability, which has multiple variations depending on the combination of buffs stacked. In the example shown, we see the 3 tragedy buff Saga called the Apocalypse, which is a very cool big damage, large AoE cone ability. I really like the effect on this one. The final thing showcased is the Bard's basic weapon attack procs with the floating spellbook. These basic attacks are different depending on which melody is currently active, which I find a really nice touch of flavour. Next we got about 40 minutes of group gameplay with the Bard in action, and I have to say, I think this might be one of the best design classes Intrepid have made so far. What particularly impressed me is the synergy between different abilities and the sheer freedom of movement the class has. I wasn't planning on being a support class in Ashes, but after seeing how you can use all of your abilities whilst moving, I'm not completely opposed to the idea. A brief art update to end the stream. And that was pretty much it for Ashes of Creation in July. Midway through August we had another livestream, this time dedicated to the details regarding the Alpha 2 roadmap, as well as details on Alpha 2 bundles. Initially, the sale of these Alpha 2 keys actually caused quite a bit of backlash from the community, as purchasing a key for Alpha 2 initially didn't give you access to the later beta testing phases. Thankfully, Intrepid listened to the community, and now buying access to Alpha 2 does also give you access to beta, along with a month of sub fee when the game's released and $15 of Embers. The main thing that was really hammered home by Steven during this stream was to not buy access for Alpha 2 expecting a quality, playable product. In fact, the way he was talking about Phase 1 specifically sounds like it's going to be a bit of a mess and borderline unplayable. But as Alpha 2 goes on into Phase 2 and Phase 3, the game will have less wipes, have more content, and by Phase 3 in May 2025, it sounds like it will be in a much more playable, consistent state. The real meat and potatoes of this stream, however, was a breakdown of everything each testing phase will contain. Phase 1 seems fairly small with a 55 square kilometer world size, 5 nodes up to level 3, 3 races, 6 class archetypes, 9 weapons, and various systems and content of which there's too much for me to read individually, so feel free to pause here and look at the graphic on screen. Phase 2 then increases the world size, more nodes, more races, more weapons, systems and content. And finally Phase 3, which will run for a very long time and introduce the rest of the content to the game over time. Phase 3 will have 24/7 uptime, and I'd personally expect this to run for at least a year until beta. I know, this game's still a long time from a full release, so don't abandon your current MMOs just yet. Additionally, realms for Alpha 2 will be initially capped at 3k players per realm, eventually increasing to the 8 to 10k range as Alpha 2 progresses. The August development livestream was definitely an epic one, as it showed off a 40-man open-world dragon raid boss, the Firebrand. The stream starts out at a point of interest in the Riverlands called the Citadel of Steel Bloom. The team are in a full 8-player party. Yes, party size in Ashes is up to 8 players, which is quite a bit different to the standard 5 players that most MMOs go with. They basically make their way through this POI doing a quest where they have to fight off multiple waves of enemies, ending in a mini-boss. They fight their way deeper inside and eventually have to stop a ritual to claim a relic in the form of a dragon egg. The party leave the POI and we see this epic shot of a giant dragon swoop down, presumably to reclaim the egg. This dragon is a level 25 boss, so I'd assume that there will be a higher level variation of this, with potentially more mechanics and higher difficulty towards the end game. The team then converts the party to a full 40-man raid, and the battle with the dragon begins. The cool thing about this showcase is that throughout the fight we get multiple POVs from different archetypes, so it's actually worth watching the video in full, but here's a brief breakdown of the dragon's mechanics. You've obviously got the basic attacks in the form of frontal cone claw swipes as well as the typical tail swipe. The dragon lifts its front legs up, stomping the ground, dealing raid-wide AoE damage. The dragon lifts its front legs up, unleashing fire, which also causes raid-wide AoE damage and burn damage, which healers can cleanse. The dragon jumps back, ascending into the sky, then flies forward, breathing fire down upon anyone in its path. The dragon lets out a roar and 3 flame circles start to appear around him. Each ring of the circle explodes one after the other, so players will need to move back out of one circle then move back in after it's exploded. The dragon jumps back and does a fire breath attack that focuses the largest group of players in proximity to each other, dealing massive damage to those standing in front. The dragon drops a living bomb on players which deals big damage, and after a few seconds spawns big AoE fire circles underneath them. At low health, the dragon flies up in the air and spawns flame elemental adds that if not killed quickly, he'll absorb and gain a stacking damage buff relative to the number of enemies absorbed. And finally, the dragon flies up in the air and smashes down to the ground, dealing massive AoE damage wherever it lands. Eventually, the team kill the dragon, and the loot consists of a mix of blue gear and epic crafting materials. Overall, by alpha standards, I thought this boss fight was really cool, and there's a decent amount of mechanics for an open world 40-man. I do however think it'd be cool if the dragon spoke to the players, Dragon's Dogma 2 style, or at the very least mentioned that he's angry because one of his eggs was stolen. But that wraps up Ashes of Creation in August. September's dev livestream was a guide to Alpha 2 as well as a preview of the Alpha 2 starting area known as Lionhold. I'll start by playing the short Guide to Alpha 2 video as it was quite a nice watch.
Hello adventurer, welcome to Ashes of Creation Alpha 2, where the world of Verra is yours to explore and shape. Ashes of Creation Alpha 2 is an important early testing phase, which will be continually updating. As a participant, your journey will help shape the game's future through providing feedback and hunting down bugs to help us refine the world of Verra. When you first step through the portal, you'll begin your journey across various regions. One of these is the city of Lionhold, a Kalar military outpost. It's the launch point for their efforts to reclaim their ancestral home. Here, you'll meet the locals and embark on countless quests and adventures. As you continue your journey through Verra, you'll discover the Citadel of the Steel Bloom. Once the proud headquarters of the Order of the Steel Bloom, now it's abandoned and overrun by mercenary bandits. Treasures, dangers, and untold stories await. You may be wondering, how will I travel to all of these places? Don't worry, adventurer, there are so many ways to explore Verra, including a variety of mounts to carry you across vast landscapes, through the dense forest, and over rugged mountains to reach your destinations. Nodes are a major part of our journey, offering you choices that will shape the world. Will you join the node of Winstead, or ally with the city of Miralith? Each decision shapes the world, and the node you choose will grow, thrive, and evolve based on your contributions. What are those contributions, you ask? You can help expand your node by trading, crafting, and helping it grow into a prosperous city. You can fight creatures, complete quests, participate in events, commissions, and mayoral commissions, node wars, and of course, gathering. Throughout your journey, you'll find valuable resources in the wild, from ores to herbs to lumber. Each resource plays a vital role in the development of both your node and your character. Caravans are another way to aid your node. Transporting vital goods is essential for your new home's development. But be wary, other players may seek to claim your cargo for themselves. Caravans aren't the only place where you'll face off against other players. Don your equipment and prepare for node wars, where skill, strategy, powerful gear, and teamwork will determine victory or defeat. Travel to Oakenbane Keep to challenge the formidable beasts lurking within. Not all threats are ordinary. Deep in the wild, Tumok, the one-eyed Cyclops, awaits. Beware, he doesn't take kindly to intruders. The world of Verra is alive and ever-changing, shaped by your choices. So prepare yourself, adventurer. Alpha 2 is just the beginning. The journey awaits. Will you rise to the challenge?
That was quite a hype video, wasn't it? Next we were given a full look at the Alpha 2 Phase 1 map, as well as the POIs and quests that will be available. As you can see, we've got 5 node locations, 1 dungeon. The areas to the northwest and southeast are lawless zones, where PvP will be auto-enabled. The only time lawless zones have been mentioned in the past were on the open seas, and these lawless zones are basically a way to test the open seas PvP feature before naval content becomes available later on. Once the open seas content is implemented, lawless zones are not intended to be utilised. For now, it's basically just for testing. These lawless zones will also eventually have their boundaries pushed back and become settled once we move into Alpha 2 Phase 2 and Phase 3. Next we get an overview of the class archetypes that will be available in Phase 1 as well as their abilities. It's actually looking like these classes are starting to come together quite nicely now and are in a good enough state for feedback and potential changes if needed. A quick overview of the Phase 1 weapons that will have their skill trees implemented: the mace, shortbow, longbow, one-handed sword, two-handed sword, wand and book. Next we get a 35-minute tour of the Lionhold starting area. Some of the NPCs actually have voiceovers, which if I recall wasn't something Intrepid was planning on doing initially, but thanks to AI it's now a lot easier. But basically they just wander around this epic looking starting area, do some questing, spend 10 minutes on a jumping puzzle, talk about the first time user interface tutorial, commissions, talk to a bunch of NPCs and talk about Alpha 2. Not really a whole lot for me to break down other than just showing off the visuals. A quick art update. And that's everything for Ashes of Creation in September, as well as this quarterly recap. Going forward, the way I cover Ashes of Creation progress will likely change a bit, as I'll be able to show you the Alpha 2 updates as they're implemented in-game firsthand. I've been doing these quarterly updates for over 2 years at this point, and I do hope they've been somewhat useful to those of you that want to follow the project, but CBA with sitting through hours of live stream content. I'm actually expecting the initial reaction to Alpha 2 Phase 1 to be quite mixed, considering expectations are rather high, but I reckon over time, as improvements are made, so will sentiment, even though it's still looking like a solid 3+ years until the full release. God help us. If you found this video helpful, entertaining, or maybe it helped you fall asleep, then chuck a like on the video for the algorithm, and I'll see you soon with my first impressions of Alpha 2 Phase 1. Thanks for watching, social media on screen, and I'll see you in the next one.